What's happened in the park is I've been beaten up on the floor next to a swing. I've been pushed on a trampoline. I've been kicked and all that stuff and punched. I think it's dangerous for young people around here.
Well, we had started about 5 years ago looking at how we might deal with violence, and what we realised was that what we'd done up until now hadn't worked. All the things we had done to communities hadn't made any difference to the levels of violence in them. So it just seemed that whilst we were looking for a new way of doing things, a new way of understanding things, of framing the problem, and the Poverty and Truth Commission came along with the notion of actually listening to people who experienced and lived, lots of them, with a daily challenge of violence, not necessarily as direct victims themselves, but been affected by the violence in their area, people they knew. And so it seemed like that we should be listening to that and trying to understand a bit better.
Every community's probably got their gangs in it with their violence in their communities. Just the other night there, I heard all this shouting, and I went to the window, and it was a bunch of guys, but a car kind of drove up just across the road. It kind of sounded like, it was like as if they were, just the way they were shouting, as if they were going to jump out the car, with guns, and it was quite frightening to hear.
I think that the Alternatives to Violence subgroup is hugely important. It's tied in very closely with the Strathclyde Police, some of whom have come to a recognition that poverty and violence are basically, at the end of the day, you'd have to use the word love. They're deficits of love in how people have experienced life. And when somebody experiences a lack of love, a lack of connection to human beings, that's what opens the door that makes violence, including violent crime, a possibility.
He dominated me. All I could do was cry. His mother and brother would encourage him. They would shout insults and cheer him on to hit me more. His friends and relatives would persuade him to put me in my place and show me who the boss was. I was a wreck. I had become anorexic. I was forever being told how ugly and fat I was. I never thought of calling the police. The thought never entered my mind. What would they do? Would they listen and understand? Would they take his side? Would it make things worse? Was it even part of their job? Did this happen to others, or was it just me?
I think that poverty is a form of violence. When you live in a world where some people are very poor and other people are very rich, it's only possible to sustain that situation if the rich are cutting themselves off from seeing and feeling what it is like for the other half. And that cutting off, that deficit of empathy, would be one of my definitions of both violence and poverty.
In the Lucchese community, we're known for a lot of bad things happening. We're portrayed to being nerds, alcoholism, drug addicts, but I actually live in a beautiful community. The percentage of people in our community that cause problems is very small. Although this problem is there, the majority of people who live around me are law-abiding, honest and hard-working. You never seem to have this all you ever see is the negative stereotype.
It's when a couple of the lads were speaking about what it was like to live in an area where there were gangs and you weren't in a gang. And the challenge was, they were saying, it seems that if you're in a gang you get lots of services, you get lots of help and lots of support, and we're young guys who are not in a gang, we don't. And so whilst they were speaking, I was beginning to formulate a response in my head that said, but the reason we need to help these young guys is because they're more disadvantaged. And then I thought, that's wholly inappropriate. If these young guys are living there, then that's actually how they feel, and therefore we need to pay attention to that. And the other thing as well is, these young guys will represent the majority of young men living in that area and young people. And so for me, and I remember that and I repeat that in here often, that was the moment for me. It's not for me to say, how we should be doing it and why we should be doing it. If that's how these young guys feel, then that's life for them. And that's what the whole point of it was. And that's what the Poverty and Truth Commission is about, because there's such a breadth of knowledge and experience around the table, whether it's professional experience, whether it's been a cop for 37 years, or whether it's been someone who's been the victim of domestic abuse. Once you weave that experience together, the outcome is far more sustainable, far more rich in understanding what's there.